My name is Lila Monroe. I'm 27. If someone asked me where the story of us began, I wouldn't start with the day we met. I'd begin with the way he looked at me when I said, "I've been there too." That's when he let his guard down. That's when I felt like I could save him. That was the first time I mistook connection for purpose. I was 27. He was 28. His name was Eli, quiet, brilliant, haunted. And I was the girl who mistook heartbreak for destiny. He told me from the start, "I'm not okay." I thought that was honesty. I thought love would be enough to fix it. But depression doesn't play fair. It whispers lies in the dark. It convinces you that you're a burden. And sometimes, when you're the one loving someone through it, you start to believe the same thing. We had good days, ones where his laughter filled the room and he'd pull me in like the world outside didn't exist. Those moments made me stay. Made me want to stay. I saw pieces of the person he could be. Without the shadow. But slowly, those days started to disappear. Replaced by silence. Sleepless nights. Missed calls. Canceled plans. And the aching sound of my own heart breaking quietly in the background. I suggested therapy. He tried. I suggested fresh air, volunteering, something to tether him to this world. But he couldn't move. He couldn't feel. I watched the man I loved sleep through life while I stayed awake, carrying the weight of both our pain. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Then I told myself it was love. Now, I don't know what to tell myself at all. Because when someone you love is constantly on the edge of falling apart, you don't get to fall apart too. And I was breaking. Quietly. Deeply. Irreversibly. I never resented him. I resented the feeling of helplessness. The way my own anxiety wrapped around me like a straitjacket. The way I was terrified that if I left, he might not survive it. That if I stayed, I might not. How do you love someone without losing yourself? How do you walk away from someone who needs saving when they need you more than you can give? I didn't know the answers. But this was the beginning of that question. The beginning of us. Or maybe, the beginning of the end. It wasn't just the quiet that crept in. It was the way he stopped reaching for me in his sleep. The way he stared at nothing for long stretches, as if trapped in a memory I couldn't touch. The way I caught him crying in the kitchen at 3 a.m., holding a coffee mug like it was an anchor. "I'm just tired," he'd whisper. "I'm just tired." And I'd pretend not to hear the unsaid parts. The parts that sounded too close to, "I don't want to be here anymore." Eli never explicitly said he wanted to die. But he didn't have to. His silences were loud enough. I started waking up with a knot in my chest, panicked until I saw him breathing. I stopped leaving candles lit, hid his razors, changed the password on the medicine cabinet. I never told him why. He never asked. He wasn't dangerous. Not to anyone, except maybe himself. And I was living in that terrifying limbo, loving someone who might disappear without warning. I became two people, the one who held him together, and the one who was falling apart behind the bathroom door. He didn't see the version of me who wept after driving him to another intake appointment. He didn't hear the voicemail I left for his older sister, begging her to talk to him, only for her to text me hours later. He shuts me out too. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to do. But the worst moment came on a Wednesday. I found the letter. Folded beneath his socks, addressed, but not sealed. My name in his handwriting. I didn't read it. I didn't have to. I knew what it meant. And suddenly, everything in me screamed, "You are in too deep." I sat on the floor of his closet for an hour. My hands were shaking. My heart had never felt so loud. I loved him. But love should not feel like fear. And I was terrified of losing him, of leaving him, of what either choice might cause. That night, I told him I needed air. Just an hour. A walk. He nodded, barely looking up from his book. I walked until my legs burned and my breath turned ragged. I called a therapist I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Booked the first appointment. I told her everything. She didn't judge me. She said something I'll never forget. "You can love someone without being responsible for their survival." Those words gutted me. Because I didn't know how to untangle love from rescue. Didn't know where I ended and he began anymore. I wanted to believe we could still make it through. That the letter was a one-time weakness. That with enough love, enough time, enough sacrifice, I could pull him back from the edge. But what if he didn't want to be pulled? What if there was something else holding him there? A shadow, a secret, a silence even I hadn't heard yet. Because the next morning, something changed. He looked at me differently. Not angry, not sad, almost afraid. And when I asked what was wrong, he only said one thing: "You weren't supposed to find that letter." Then he turned and walked out of the room. "You weren't supposed to find that letter." 7 words. That was all he said before he disappeared into the hallway. And just like that, I was left in the quiet again. But this time, it wasn't just silent, it was cold. Like the temperature of a room right after someone lies. I didn't sleep that night. I kept playing those words over and over in my mind. Was it just shame? Was he embarrassed? Or was it something more? Something darker? I wanted to ask, but I was afraid of the answer. The next morning, Eli acted like nothing had happened. He kissed my forehead, made tea, sat beside me on the couch while we half-watched a movie neither of us cared about. I waited for him to bring it up. He never did. I told myself to let it go, but my instincts wouldn't stop humming. Something was off. Not just with the letter, but with the entire narrative I'd believed about him. Eli had always painted his past in half-truths. He'd say things like, "I've been through stuff," or "I had a rough patch," or "My parents were cold," but never details. Never full stories. And I never pushed. I thought I was being respectful. Now, I wonder if I was being managed. That weekend, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do. I opened his desk drawer when he was in the shower. I told myself I just wanted to know what he wasn't telling me. That I deserved to know. That this wasn't about mistrust, it was about survival. But even then, I knew I was crossing a line. Inside the drawer, a stack of old journals, a box of Polaroids wrapped in an elastic band, and a flash drive labeled only with a year 2018. I didn't touch the drive, but I did open one journal. I'll never forget the sentence I landed on. They said it was an accident, but I still see her when I sleep. I stopped breathing. Her. Not them. Not it. Her. Who is she? What happened? Why did he never mention anyone? And why did my heart suddenly feel like it was being squeezed by invisible hands? When I heard the water stop, I snapped the journal shut and slid it back into place like it burned me. The rest of the day, I acted normal. Too normal. And Eli noticed. His eyes lingered on me longer than usual, like he was watching for cracks. That night, I lay in bed beside him while he slept. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. I loved him, but I was starting to realize I didn't know him. Not really. And maybe that was the real danger, not his depression, not even his suicidal thoughts. But the parts of him I had never been allowed to see. I finally whispered Eli. He didn't stir. So I reached for my phone and searched his name online. Something I'd never done in the whole year we'd been together. At first, nothing unusual came up. But 5 pages in, I found an old article. Dated November 2018. Local man questioned after apparent drowning in Oak Ridge Woods Lake. My stomach dropped. There was a blurry photo. It was Eli. A younger version, but unmistakably him. The girl's name was Maren Keene. No charges filed. No evidence of wrongdoing. But he'd been the last person to see her alive. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about the man sleeping next to me unraveled like string in water. It took everything in me not to shake him awake and scream, "Who the hell is Maren Keene?" But instead, I stared at the man I loved and wondered if I was lying next to a stranger. The next morning, I didn't mention the article. I didn't mention the journal. But something had shifted between us. Or maybe, something revealed itself. Eli was watching me more closely now. Or maybe I was just finally seeing it. The pauses in his sentences. The way his eyes flicked toward me when I wasn't looking. The slight tension in his jaw when I asked about his past. Innocently, testing the waters. So, I said while drying dishes that afternoon, I found some photos in the drawer. You and your friends, college maybe? He blinked once. Too slowly. Oh, yeah. That box has been in there forever. You looked happy in them, I added carefully. He didn't reply. Instead, he wiped his hands on a towel and turned away. I used to be. And just like that, the door was shut again. He had a gift for that, closing emotional doors without slamming them. Soft denial. Quiet control. I told myself it could still be nothing. A girl he once loved. A tragedy that haunted him. Maybe it wasn't suspicious, just unhealed. But my body disagreed. Every time I looked at him, I felt a knot in my chest tighten. I couldn't unsee the article. The headline. His face blurred beneath the weight of a story he'd never told me. That night, I returned to the journal. Waited until he took his sleeping meds and curled up beside me, breathing heavy. I tiptoed into the living room, opened the drawer, and grabbed the same journal. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the pages. And then I found it August 19th, 2018. She said she didn't feel safe. That I scared her sometimes. I told her she was imagining things. I told her I loved her. But she wouldn't stop crying. She said she needed space. That she'd told someone else what happened that night. That they might come asking questions. I didn't mean to raise my voice. I didn't mean to grab her arm. But she slipped. God, she just slipped. They said it was an accident. I never told anyone she hit her head on the rocks. The room spun. My skin went cold. I read the last sentence over and over, willing it to change. Hoping it would read like guilt, not confession. But it didn't. It read like truth. I don't remember putting the journal back. I don't remember walking to the bathroom, closing the door, and vomiting into the sink. All I remember was the feeling that followed. I was in danger. Not because he would hurt me, but because I had learned too much and he knew it. The next morning, Eli was already awake when I opened my eyes. Sitting at the edge of the bed. Watching me. You okay? I asked, trying to sound casual. He tilted his head slowly. You didn't sleep well. My blood ran cold. He never noticed things like that. I forced a small laugh. Just bad dreams. He didn't respond. Just stood up, walked out, and closed the door behind him. For the first time in our relationship, I was afraid to be alone with him. That night, I packed a small bag. Just the essentials. I told myself it was for just in case. But deep down, I knew it was the beginning of the end. Later, as I lay in bed beside him again, pretending to sleep, I heard him whisper something under his breath. I strained to listen. He said her name. Marin. I opened my eyes and looked at him. But he didn't move. Didn't know I was awake. His fingers were curled tight around the bedsheet. And in the dark, I felt it again, that cold hum in the walls. The presence of a truth too big to hold. I used to think the most painful part of heartbreak was absence. The empty bed. The unanswered text. The slow erasure of memories. But I was wrong. The worst part isn't when love disappears. It's when it still exists, but sits beside fear. When you lie in bed next to someone you love and realize your heart is no longer safe with them. That's where I was with Eli. Still in love. Still aching. Still afraid. The morning after I heard him whisper Marin's name in his sleep, I did something reckless. I drove out to Oak Ridge Woods Lake. I told Eli I had errands to run, then lied about a dentist appointment. I half expected him to question me, but he just nodded slowly and said, "Take your time." His eyes didn't match his words. There was something else behind them. A quiet calculation. Like he was counting down. I drove for over an hour. The lake was smaller than I expected. Secluded. Ringed with trees that whispered in the wind like they knew what happened here. The water was still. Too still. I parked and walked along the path. My heart felt like it had swallowed stones. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Near a trail marker, I found it. A wooden bench. Weathered. Cracked. A name carved into the top slat. Marin Keene, 1993 to 2018, forever loved. Forever young. I sat there for a long time, watching the water. Somewhere beneath it, a girl's life ended. And someone I loved may have held her hand just before it happened. What if she wasn't the only one? What if this story, Eli's story, wasn't just about mental illness and trauma, but about secrets that rot in silence? Back home, I started keeping notes. A journal of my own. I copied the journal entry about Marin word for word from memory. I listed everything I'd observed, every strange mood shift, every missing puzzle piece. Eli grew more distant. Then, suddenly, more affectionate. Like he sensed something slipping and was trying to reel it back in. He cooked dinner, bought candles, played music I once told him I liked a year ago. That terrified me more than the silence. I kept my bag packed in the closet. At night, I didn't sleep. I listened. And one night, I heard it again. Eli, whispering in his sleep. But this time, not her name. This time, he said, you weren't supposed to stay. The next morning, I got bold. I asked him, what happened in 2018? He froze, utensil halfway to his mouth. Blinked once. Slowly. Why? Just wondering, I lied. You never talk about it. He looked down, pushed food around on his plate. Because there's nothing to talk about, he said. That's not what the newspaper said. The silence between us became a third person in the room. He met my eyes. No smile. No emotion. Just flat, cold awareness. You've been looking me up? I had to. He stood up. Slowly. Not menacing. Just deliberate. You read things you shouldn't have, he said, voice barely above a whisper. You never gave me the truth, I shot back, my own fear now boiling into defiance. You let me fall in love with a version of you that doesn't exist. Don't say that. Why not? Because, he said, walking closer, I need you to believe in that version. My throat went dry. And then he reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. The flash drive. 2018. I was going to destroy this, he said, voice calm now. But maybe it's time you see who I really am. The flash drive sat on the kitchen table like it was alive. I stared at it long after Eli left the room. He didn't say where he was going, just that he needed air. The door shut gently behind him. Too gently. Like he didn't want me to know whether he was coming back. I stayed frozen in the chair for what felt like hours. I hadn't even touched it. Just stared. It was small. Harmless looking. Black casing. Smudged at the edges. The kind of thing you'd carry lecture notes on. A slideshow. A backup of some long-forgotten files. Not evidence. Not confession. And yet, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Because deep down I knew whatever lived on that flash drive was the real version of Eli. The one I'd never been allowed to meet. The version that scared Marin. The version that whispered my name in the dark. I didn't watch it right away. Instead, I made tea. Burned my tongue. Paced the apartment until the floorboards felt memorized. Checked the windows. Checked my phone. Thought about calling someone. But who? Who could I tell without sounding completely unhinged? My boyfriend gave me a flash drive and I think it might contain, what? A confession? A lie? A warning? I didn't even know what I was looking for. Only that I couldn't unknow what I already knew. It was midnight when I finally plugged it in. The laptop made a low hum. I braced myself. Inside was one folder. Marin. Just her name. I clicked. Inside were 6 files. 1 was a video. 3 were audio recordings. 1 was a Word doc. And the last was a single photo. I opened the photo first. It was Marin. Young. Smiling. Golden hair, slightly wind-tangled. Freckles. Holding a notebook to her chest like a secret. She was beautiful. And alive. I stared at her for a long time. Was this who he saw in his dreams? Then I clicked on the Word doc. It was short. Journal entry, July 2nd, 2018. He thinks I don't know what he's doing. But I see it. The shifts. The disappearing hours. The way he looks at me when he thinks I'm not paying attention. He scares me when he's quiet. He scares me more when he's kind. There's something in him that doesn't belong to the rest of us. If anything happens to me, I need someone to ask questions. Please don't let them call it an accident. I stopped reading. My breath hitched. The room tilted. She knew. She knew something wasn't right. And no one had listened. I didn't open the audio files yet. I was too afraid of her voice. Instead, I clicked on the video. It was dated August 17th, 2018. 2 days before her death. At first, the screen was black. Then flickers of light. A shaky hand. Low breathing. The camera adjusted. It was pointed at a mirror. Marin's face appeared. Eyes swollen from crying. Voice barely above a whisper. "If you're watching this, then I'm probably gone." She sniffled. Looked away. Looked back. His name is Eli. He tells everyone he's just sad. Just broken. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think he wants to be broken. I think it gives him cover. I think, she trailed off. Then whispered, "I don't think I'm the first." My hand flew to my mouth. "Please," she said, "if anyone sees this, just make sure someone knows." The video cut to black. I sat in silence. Tears hot on my cheeks. The world didn't feel real anymore. I had kissed that man. Slept beside him. Defended him. Loved him. And now I was starting to believe that he didn't need saving. He needed stopping. I unplugged the drive and locked it in the drawer beside my bed. Hid it under old scarves, notebooks, things he'd never touch. He came home an hour later. I was still in bed, eyes closed, pretending. He slid in beside me, warm and slow, his breath near my neck. He whispered, "Did you watch it?" I didn't answer. He waited a beat too long, then placed a kiss on my shoulder. "You'll understand soon," he said. And just like that, he fell asleep. I stared into the dark, heart pounding. Because I knew now, this wasn't depression. This was a man hiding something far worse. I used to think pretending was something people did to spare others. Now I know it's also how you survive. The morning after I watched the flash drive, I woke up to Eli making breakfast. He stood by the stove, humming to himself. Something classical. His back turned, shoulders relaxed. The smell of butter and rosemary filled the room. It looked so normal. It almost fooled me. "Morning," he said, glancing at me over his shoulder. I smiled. Small. Controlled. "Morning." He plated an omelet like it was art and slid it in front of me. No mention of the drive. No mention of what I might have seen. But something was different now. His voice. His movements. Sharper. Like he was waiting for me to flinch. He was watching me closely. And I was watching him back. The performance continued for days. We made dinner together. Watched old movies. Sat on the porch like a couple who still had forever. But every second was an act. Because now I knew what Marin knew. And I couldn't unknow it. The terrifying part was that he didn't try to deny it. He just waited. Calm. Almost amused. Like he expected me to fall back in line. But I didn't. Not this time. That Friday, I made a decision. I needed to leave. Not next week. Not soon. Now. But leaving Eli wasn't as simple as walking out the door. He knew my routines. My friends. My family. He knew the shape of my life. And worse, I didn't know what he was capable of. The real him, the one Marin saw, was unpredictable. Quietly dangerous. The kind of danger that smiled while it studied you. So I did what survivors do. I planned. I texted my sister under a code phrase we made years ago when she was in an abusive relationship. "Can I borrow your red jacket?" meant I'm not safe. She replied in under a minute. "Yes. Want me to bring it to you or come get you?" I typed, "Come get me." Sunday. Noon. Don't call. Don't knock. Just wait across the street. Saturday passed in slow, breathless hours. Eli seemed relaxed. Too relaxed. He made a fire in the fireplace. Opened wine. Played one of his old playlists from when we first started dating. Like we were rewinding to the beginning. "You've been quiet lately," he said around 9 p.m. I shrugged. Just tired. He tilted his head, watching me for a long time. I thought he was going to call my bluff. But instead, he smiled. Not warm. Not safe. Just knowing. That night, I didn't sleep. And around 3 a.m., I did something stupid. I went back to the flash drive. Not to watch the videos, I couldn't. Not again. But I copied the contents to a private cloud drive. Encrypted it. Sent it to my sister with no message, just in case. And then I saw it. A hidden file I hadn't noticed before. Lila, final, my blood ran cold. I hadn't created it. It wasn't there before. It had been added after. I clicked it. It was a document. You'll leave soon. I know that. You're smart, Lila. Always have been. I watched you watch me. I knew you'd go looking. It was only a matter of time. So this is for you. One last truth. It wasn't just Marin. And you're not the first person to pretend they could save me. But I hope you're the last. I slammed the laptop shut, heart racing. I felt the oxygen drain from the room. And then I heard a voice from the dark. You shouldn't have opened that. I turned. Eli was standing in the hallway, half-shadowed, wide awake. You shouldn't have opened that. The words felt like a lock turning behind me. Eli stood in the hallway. Barefoot, quiet, unreadable, like a shadow that had taken shape. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just watched him watching me. The laptop still sat in front of me, glowing. That final file opened like a wound. His words crawling off the screen and wrapping around my throat. It wasn't just Marin. I swallowed hard. My voice, when it came, felt like gravel. How long have you been watching me? He didn't flinch. Just took a slow step forward. I've always watched you, Lila. That's how I know you're different. Another step. Different from Marin? He tilted his head slightly, like a curious animal. No. Smarter than Marin. I felt the room tilt. And the others? I whispered. He smiled, small and sharp. There weren't many. Not like you think. Not many. Not none. My fingers gripped the edge of the table, nails pressing into the wood. If I moved too fast, I'd startle him. If I moved too slow, I'd lose my chance. I forced my breath to stay calm. Forced my voice into something that sounded like steady. Why did you give me the flash drive? He leaned against the wall now. No rush. No fear. That was your test. My heart skipped. I needed to know what kind of person you were. If you'd run. Or if you'd stay. Why would I stay after seeing that? He looked down for a moment. Like the question genuinely confused him. Because you said you loved me. That broke something in me. Some final, fragile chord. I stood up, slowly, never turning my back to him. He didn't move. You don't love someone like this, I said. He looked at me then, like I'd disappointed him. You said you understood broken people, he said softly. You said you'd been there. I almost laughed. Not out of humor, but out of disbelief. This isn't broken, I said. This is dangerous. That did something. His jaw tightened. His hands curled into slow fists at his sides. And then he said it, words I'll never forget. I should have buried that drive. The next minute was a blur. I grabbed my bag from under the couch cushion, the one I'd packed days ago. My shoes were already on. Keys in my pocket. But before I reached the door, he stepped into the entryway. Blocking it. Calm. Cold. Controlled. I can't let you leave like this, Lila. Like what? He shrugged. Afraid of me. You want me afraid of you, I said. It gives you power. He stared for a moment, considering that. And then, he smiled. It wasn't rage I saw in his face. Not grief. Not even guilt. It was fascination. Do you know what I see in you? He asked. I don't care. You're exactly like her. Marin? He shook his head slowly. No. The first. I froze. A sharp, silent shift happened in my chest. The first. There had always been a before Marin. I had felt it in his stories. In the silences. In the way he never let me too close to certain memories. I had assumed Marin was the beginning of the tragedy. But Marin was just one chapter. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. Eli wasn't afraid of being caught. He wanted to be seen. This was his version of intimacy, revealing the monster slowly, piece by piece, and watching if you'd still love him afterward. Step aside, I said, heart pounding. No, I'm calling the police. You won't, he said gently. You're not ready for that. You still want to believe this was all a misunderstanding. That I'm sick. Fixable. Forgivable. He was right. And he was wrong. Because in that moment, something in me hardened. The part of me that always wanted to save people, it broke. And what replaced it wasn't fear. It was clarity. I don't love you anymore, Eli, I said. His face went blank. And I will never forgive what you did to them. I turned, not toward the front door, but toward the back. The patio door I'd unlocked earlier in case this happened. I ran. He didn't follow. At least not right away. But I heard the door open behind me just as I crossed the street. My sister's car was already parked near the curb. She flung the passenger door open and screamed my name. I dove in, slammed the door, and she hit the gas before I even buckled my seatbelt. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because if I saw him standing there, calm, smiling, I don't know what I would have done. Later that night, in my sister's guest room, I opened my email and saw a new message. No sender name. No subject. Just a single line. You didn't ask about the cabin. You didn't ask about the cabin. That line stayed with me like smoke in the lungs. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. Each time, it landed heavier. I hadn't replied. I couldn't. My sister sat on the couch across the room, legs curled beneath her, eyes glued to some baking show neither of us cared about. She didn't ask questions. She just gave me space. But I knew she was worried. I hadn't told her everything. Not yet. Only that Eli scared me now. Only that I wasn't safe. But that email changed something. It wasn't just a loose thread, it was an invitation. The kind that taunts you from just out of reach. The kind that wants to be pulled. Because he wanted me to find it. The cabin. The next piece. The final puzzle. He was done pretending. Now he was performing. I waited until my sister fell asleep, then opened my laptop again. I dug through Eli's old emails. Through his saved map locations. Every backup, browser cache, contact. I searched his name alongside words like cabin, lake, property, rental, accident, police. At 2:14 a.m., I found it. An old booking confirmation from 5 years ago. A secluded cabin in northern Vermont. Booked 3 times in the last 5 years, always the same weekend in September. Always under a different name. The first time, Maren Keene. The second time, Joshua Cross. The third, L. Monroe. My name. He had booked a trip for us this fall, I just hadn't known yet. My hands went numb. He was planning something. I didn't sleep that night. Just stared at the screen, heart hammering. The invitation was clear. The question now wasn't if I should go. It was whether I could survive it. The next morning, I lied to my sister. Told her I needed a weekend away. Time to clear my head. No phones. No distractions. She looked at me like she could see through it, but didn't argue. I booked a rental car. Packed light. Brought a burner phone. Kept the flash drive, the printed emails, and one of Maren's old photos buried inside my bag, reminders of what was real. The drive to Vermont was long. Rain followed me the entire way, like something just behind the clouds was watching. By the time I reached the old cabin road, the GPS signal was fading. Trees loomed on both sides. Thick. Uninviting. And then, through the mist and fog and endless pines, it appeared. A one-story cabin. Wooden. Gray with time. The kind of place that looks abandoned even when it isn't. There were no neighbors. No cars. Just birdsong and the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. I stepped inside. It smelled like pine, dust, and something faintly chemical. The air was cold, heavy, stale. There was furniture. Neat. Clean. Too clean. A notebook sat on the kitchen counter. Its cover blank. Inside, a list of dates and names. Most crossed out. The first one wasn't Maren. It was a girl named Claire Heller. Dated 2015. I turned the page. Photos. Some blurry. Some sharp. All girls. All alone. All in this cabin. My stomach turned. He'd brought them here. Observed them. Recorded them. Then erased them. I was shaking when I heard it. A knock. 1, then 2. From inside the cabin. Behind the bedroom door. I turned. Slow. Frozen. I crept toward it, every nerve in my body screaming. I pushed the door open and saw a small wooden box on the bed. That was all. No one else. Just the box. Inside, a camera. A cassette tape. And a ring. Not mine. Not Maren's. Another girl's. Another ghost. On the lid of the box was a note. Handwritten. Familiar. I always keep something. A piece. A proof. You're not like the others, Lila. You're still breathing. I dropped the box. Staggered back. Hit the wall. I couldn't breathe. He had left this for me, not as a threat, but as a memory. As proof that I was meant to be the next. I ran. Didn't look back. Drove through fog like it was fire. And when I finally made it back to town, I sat in the rental car outside a police station for 15 minutes, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in my life. Then I walked inside and told them everything. The fluorescent lights of the police station buzzed overhead, sterile and unforgiving. I sat in a hard plastic chair, clutching the box Eli had left behind, the camera and cassette tape weighing heavy in my bag. The detective across from me, sharp-eyed, calm, asked questions I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. Names, dates, details. Fragments of memories I tried to bury. I told them about Marin, about Claire, about the emails, the journal, the flash drive. I told them about the cabin, and about the man I thought I loved. When I finished, the detective nodded slowly. Lila, this is serious. We'll open an investigation immediately. This might take time, but you did the right thing. I nodded, but inside, I felt hollow. Relief mixed with dread. Would the law be enough? Would justice ever come? Days passed in a blur of interviews, phone calls, and sleepless nights. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Was it Eli? Was he trying to contact me? But no messages came. No threats. No apologies. No answers. One evening, my sister found me staring at the cassette tape, old and brittle. "Do you want me to play it?" she asked gently. I hesitated, but then nodded. We listened together. The voice was familiar. Calm. Measured. Eli's voice. But it wasn't a confession. It was a story. A story about pain, about loss, about things too heavy to carry alone. He talked about his own brokenness. How the past had swallowed him whole. How he'd tried to escape but never could. And then a chilling line. Some wounds don't heal. They just wait. I looked at my sister, tears in my eyes. I don't know if this is a cry for help or a warning. She hugged me. Either way, you're not alone anymore. The following week, the police called me in. Evidence from the cabin. New testimonies. Old reports reopened. They told me Eli was officially a suspect in multiple investigations. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over. Because in the quiet moments, when I was alone, I could still hear him, whispering in the dark. The weeks after Eli became a suspect were some of the hardest of my life. But they were also the first time in a long while that I felt a flicker of something I thought I'd lost forever, hope. I found myself leaning on people I hadn't expected to, my sister, first and foremost, who stayed with me almost every night, her presence a steady anchor in a storm I'd long ignored. She didn't push me to talk about Eli or the past. She simply sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on mine, letting me choose when to break the silence. I also met Maya at a support group for survivors of trauma. She was quiet at first, but there was a fierce kindness in her eyes. One night, as we shared stories over coffee, she said something that shook me. Sometimes healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about learning how to carry it differently. Those words lodged themselves deep inside me. Slowly, I started writing again. Not the heavy journal that chronicled fear and betrayal, but a new kind of writing, a collection of memories, hopes, and questions. I wrote about the day I met Eli, the moments of joy that felt so real, and the shadows that crept in between. Writing was my therapy. But the darkness wasn't gone. It lurked in the quiet moments. The way my phone buzzed unexpectedly, the occasional feeling of being watched, the way nightmares still clawed their way to the surface. The police investigations continued. Officers came by with updates, but Eli remained elusive, one step ahead, it seemed. One afternoon, Maya gave me a gift, a small locket with a single word engraved inside, breathe. She said, when it all feels too much, hold this and remember, you're still here. Still breathing. Still fighting. I clutched the locket every day, a talisman against the shadows. Then, one night, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, one I hadn't seen before. Eli, standing at the edge of the cabin, but not alone. A figure stood beside him, obscured by shadow, but unmistakably watching. And below, scrawled in Eli's handwriting, "There's always someone watching. Always someone waiting." I shivered. The mystery wasn't over. Not yet. The photo haunted me for days. That shadowy figure beside Eli, the one watching, waiting, became a ghost that lingered in every quiet moment. I would catch myself staring at it again and again, searching for clues in the obscured face, trying to understand the darkness I had stepped into. Who was he? An accomplice? A ghost from Eli's fractured past? Or something far more terrifying, someone who had shaped the man I thought I loved? I shared the photograph with Detective Reynolds, the man who had become my anchor through this nightmare. His eyes darkened as he examined the image. "We've been looking for him for months," he said quietly. "Eli's not alone. He's never been alone." Those words sent a shiver down my spine. Days later, the investigation broke wide open. The shadowy figure was identified. His name was Nathan, Eli's estranged brother. A man whose silence was as deep as Eli's secrets, whose own history was marked by violence, scars, and whispered rumors no one wanted to believe. Police raided a secluded property deep in the woods, a place Nathan had been hiding for years. When they searched Eli's devices, they uncovered a labyrinth of messages, plans, threats, and chilling confessions. Eli hadn't acted alone. The nightmare I'd lived through was shared between two men bound by blood and brokenness. But the full truth of what happened to Marin, Claire, and the others was tangled in layers of lies, regret, and pain that might never be fully untangled. Meanwhile, I fought to reclaim my own life, piece by fragile piece. The nightmares didn't vanish overnight. The echoes of Eli's voice, the memories of his touch, haunted me in the quiet hours. Healing was never linear. Some days were harder than others, but I discovered strength in places I never expected. Therapy sessions that felt like lifelines, Maya's fierce friendship that held me steady, and my sister's unwavering love that reminded me I was not alone. One spring morning, the lake near Oak Ridge Woods was calm, the sun warming the earth after a long winter. I stood by the water's edge, the bench with Marin's name etched into the wood still waiting like a monument to a life stolen too soon. I traced the carved letters with my fingertips, feeling the weight of all the stories held in that quiet place. Marin Keene forever loved. Forever young. I whispered a goodbye, not just to Marin, but to the girl I used to be, the naive woman who believed love could heal all wounds. Eli was behind bars, his fate sealed by the law. Nathan faced charges too, their bond of darkness finally broken by justice. The wheels of the legal system turned slowly, sometimes frustratingly so, but they moved nonetheless. More importantly, I moved forward. I still carry the scars, the marks left by love and betrayal, by fear and survival. But I also carry the light, the hope that grows in the cracks, the quiet power of breathing again, the knowledge that I am more than what happened to me. Because love, even when it leaves behind shadows and heartbreak, teaches us the most vital lesson of all. How to survive. How to forgive, not them, but ourselves. How to live again. And so I do.